Okay. Okay, we are live. Go ahead and call the meeting to order, Melinda. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Forest Grove School District Budget Committee. Today is April 13th, 2020. As far as a flag salute, are we going to move forward with a flag salute? How are we going to do this? Are you there?
We've been doing it just over just saying it for the board meeting, so we could do that, yes.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice.
All right. Introduction. I'll start with myself. I'm Melinda Fisher, and I am a parent with kids at Forest Grove, with Forest Grove School District. And let's just go from here. I'm not sure how we're going to do this.
This is Brad Farrell, a school board member.
Valerie Ingram, school board member. Kate Grandesky, school board member.
Narcia Rodriguez, school board member.
Dave Parker, superintendent.
Kyle Johnstone, parent, and 2 kids at Dilly.
Mark Everett, school board member.
Mike Conroy, budget committee member.
Kathy Bonson, secretary.
Eileen Clute, business.
That it?
David Warner, communications.
All right, is that it? Sounds
I think
like
so.
It. Okay, so everyone was sent an agenda, and I'm looking for someone to move to approve tonight's agenda.
I move that we approve tonight's agenda as presented.
Second.
I'll just pick one.
Okay. Great. All right. All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda, say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right. It passes. Next thing on the agenda is the approval of the March 9th, 2020 meeting minutes. Can I have someone move to approve the meeting minutes?
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from the March meeting.
Second.
I second.
Anyone? Great. All right. All those in favor of approving the March 9th meeting minutes, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. It was approved. And next up is the budget and cash flow update with Eileen Clute.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for doing this all remotely tonight. It's kind of different and weird, but we'll get it all figured out. Tonight, I'm going to go over both the general fund cash flow for this current year and financial situation on where we're at, and then talk more about the 2020-21 budget process. I have the current presentation up on everybody's screen right now. And I've also emailed it out to everybody. So if you don't have access one way or another, please let me know so that you can at least follow along. So tonight, if we start with the general fund cash flow, our current situation gave a cash flow last month, and there's been a lot of things that have changed over just the last 30 days. We are currently getting updates on our state school fund for 3 years. Between March and May, we get updates on all 3 years. What is done is the state reconciles all of the state data, all school districts, and we're reconciling our information. We're looking at the prior year, current year, and next fiscal year's budgets all in one time. So there's lots of updates coming through. And then the other thing is really just the change in how we operate this year. Districts went from really exciting planning, looking towards record investment into schools through the student investment account funds, to schools closing and us doing business completely different than what we have done in the past. So we're all learning and we're all experiencing new things, including changes in our revenue and expenditure patterns. Looking at our revenue and expenditures each week, we're looking at what changes are happening, different things with our spending through the shutdown. And then we're looking at what costs we're incurring to implement all of the new distance learning. And then we're also looking at the savings between, what custodial or utility savings, sub savings, all of those things that we're looking at. What does that look like in the event of a shutdown? And what does that look like now that we're doing business differently? And then the last thing I have on here is really the COVID-19 costs. There are some reimbursement grants out there. So we're looking into different grants and different opportunities. But at this point in the cash flow, I'm assuming worst case scenario that none of it gets reimbursed so that we can make sure that we're looking at what is that potential. So this slide is our general fund cash flow projection. It includes the 2019-20 budget, actual through March 30th, forecast through June, total forecast. Then there's the comparison to adopted budget here, the February cash flow, and then variance. So you can see that the difference between just 30 days from now to now has changed significantly. Our revenue is up by $312,000. The reason for that, there's a few different things that have occurred in the last month. One is our interest rates have reduced.
Wait, Eileen, can I interrupt you really quick?
Yeah.
I thought you said that the presentation was going to be projected on our screens, but I'm not seeing it.
Do you not see it? Does anybody else not see it?
It was there at the beginning.
Michael Conroy.
Not there
I
anymore.
was just texting and we lost it. Yeah, we lost it, Eileen. It was there to start and then it went away. There it is.
Sorry.
Fresh it. No, thank you. If you're not seeing it, let me know. Okay, so everybody can see it. Can you also see my pointer on where my pointer is?
No.
Okay. So
Okay, now it just went away again.
Oh no.
Well, maybe is it because Michael decided to present? I think Eileen's the only one that can present it. No worries.
All right.
It's back.
Okay, try it again.
Hey, we're getting good at this, you guys.
So throughout this month, what we've noticed is our interest rates are dropping. They went from 2.6% at the start of the school year. Now they're down to 1.75%. So our local revenue is reducing a little bit. We've also reduced our athletic fees for spring sports. Since none of spring sports really happened, we are going to do refunds and not record any of the revenue to the general fund for that. And then the increases for the month have really been around the state school fund updates. We received the March state school fund update. It increases our revenue by $164,000. This increase is based on a couple of different things happening at the state level, and then, well, one thing happening at the state level, and then our individuals. So the statewide local revenue has increased, and as a result from the equalization formula, it has given us a little bit more revenue. Our poverty weights for the first time in few years have increased. The last several years they've decreased, and we gained an additional 15 weights this year. And then finally, our teacher experience ratio went from a negative 0.01 to a positive 0.06. And that all three of those are going to impact our current year state revenue. And then lastly, our long-term care and treatment reimbursement grant award. We got our prior year reconciliations in and our current year estimates. So both of those combined was an increase of $196,000. Overall, we're about $312,000 higher in revenue just compared to the same time last month. Okay, so expenditures, similar format. We are at $394,000 and less spend than what we had showed this time last month. And most of it is all going to be from labor and benefits. Since the shutdown, what we did in this cash flow is took out all staffing. So if classified or licensed staff member had left and we were waiting to rehire, we did not re-encumber for the rest of the year. So we assumed that we're not refilling any positions between now, or any open positions between now and June. And we also took out all of the sub and temp time for the month of April. When this cash flow was prepared, it was under the assumption that school would resume April 28th based on the governor's mandate. Since this cash flow was prepared, now we're closed through June. So over the upcoming week and 2 weeks, we're going to go through all of our expenditures and try to figure out what exactly savings we can count on between now and the end of the year to really fine tune that ending fund balance and identify what those savings are. So this ending fund balance is most likely going to grow between now and June, just based on the shutdown and the savings that we should incur. Any questions on our current cash flow? Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
So on the general fund budget for next year, wanted to spend a little bit of time to talk about the building blocks of the 2021 budget, both in revenue and expenditures, and then also to look at what the risks are in the economy and the impacts of this school shutdown. So to start with our revenue, our state school fund is our largest component of the Forest Grove School District's general fund budget. This is our operating funds. It is the second year of the biennium of a $9 billion state school fund allocation. At a 51% split for the second year, it's a $4.59 billion state school fund for next year. What we don't know is how the current economic situation is going to impact this state school fund. It most likely will impact this allocation, but we don't know what that total dollar amount is going to be. So for right now, what we're doing is we're building the budget based on the known facts. We know what the state school fund allocation is. And then what we're going to have to do is make adjustments once we know what that total impact is. There's a lot of assumptions out there on what that percentage is going to be. It would just be really difficult to make a lot of reductions on an assumption that we don't know. So for right now, we're rolling forward as is, rolling forward with what those known costs are, but also having those internal discussions and conversations about what that potential could be. We do have a lot of risks going into next year. The closure of many businesses is going to result in less state funding, which could impact our state school funding for next year. We're seeing interest revenue declining. Not sure how much it's going to continue to decline over the next year. So that's going to also be a factor in our budget. student investment account fund is based on our economy and our revenue in this state. So we will most likely see an impact in our SIA funds, other state and federal grants that could be impacted by this. Our cash flow could be impacted by the shutdown based on property tax receipts and receiving that revenue to the district. And then also we are just looking at the timing of this shutdown. How long is it going to last? Is it going to last through June? Is it going to last longer? So we also want to keep thinking about what that impact could be for us. State of Oregon, however, has some offset revenue that could help make this not as bad. The state of Oregon is in a really good position compared to other states around us. We have two stability funds. One is Oregon's Rainy Day Fund. It was established back in 2007 and has about $595 million in it. They've utilized it 3 times between 2009 and 2011. And part of that was to support education. And then the Education Stability Fund back in 1996 is when it was established. It's got about $620 million in that fund. This is from lottery funds and the corporate tax kicker. These have been accessed in the last 3 years also, or 3 times in the last, I guess, 2003, 9, and 13. So these are 2 places that the state can use as resources to help offset some of these reductions that we will most likely see in the next year. Both of these funds require a 3/5 majority vote in the legislature and 2 consecutive negative economic forecasts. So we have our next economic forecast that's going to come out in mid-May, around May 20th. That will give us more guidance on what this potential reduction could be. The challenge is we've already prepared a budget and presented it to the budget committee, and we're already deliberating on it by the time this state is going to receive that economic forecast. So that's why we're going to go ahead and move forward with budgeting at what we know, the current state school fund allocation, and then we're going to have to make some adjustments. I did want to go into a little bit about the third component that the state has access to. It's the CARES Act. It's the federal stimulus funds that were signed into law on March 27th. It's about $2.2 trillion into the economy, of which $13.5 billion goes to K-12 schools across the U.S. For Oregon, what that means is we have 2 I guess, pots of money to access. One is the Elementary and Secondary Education Relief Fund, and one is the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund. So it's about $150 million that the state of Oregon is going to also have access to. We are not sure how this is going to be distributed to K-12 schools yet, but we're still waiting to see those rules for the distribution of these funds. Okay, so I did want to add a little bit about what the Oregon Economic Analysis are working on. They're currently working on trying to develop that May outlook, and they're talking about a different kind of recession recovery this year. Typically, a recession recovery either looks like a V, where it's a significant drop and then it jumps straight back up. Or it's a significant drop and then it takes a lot longer to bounce back out of it. What they're thinking is going to happen with this recession and this drop in our economy is we'll see this significant drop, and then after the stay at home is lifted, we'll see a significant jump up and then most likely a longer curve out. It really depends on the damage that's been done over this period of time, but they do see that as soon as the stay at home is lifted, people are going to go out and spend. They're going to go out and have dinner. They're going to go out and get their hair cut and all of these things that they've been holding on. they're just probably going to take a little bit longer to get back into last month's spending patterns. Okay. That's a little bit about the revenue and what we're looking at and all of the variables that we have going on right now. Looking at the expenditures going into next year, when I talked last month, we looked at what the potential for 2021 would be if we took this year's spending and basically just rolled it forward with a few broad assumptions. Now what we've done is we've taken all of our building blocks of our budget, and now we're looking at those individual items and rolling those into a budget. So we have two big components of our budget. One is our staffing and one is our non-wage costs. In our staffing, it includes our building allocations, our district and department staffing, our stipends, and then our sub and temp time. And then in our non-wage allocations, it's all based on, the building allocations are all based on projected enrollment. So each building gets a discretionary budget, which is a certain dollar amount per student. And then our ELD allocations go out to the buildings also, which is a dollar amount per student. And if I look, let's see. So if we look at the discretionary budget, elementary schools get $65 per student. The upper elementary school gets $75 per student. The middle school gets $80 per student, and the high school gets $114 per student. And then ELD is $20 for elementary schools and $25 for secondary. So that's the building discretionary allocations. Department budgets are all zero-based budgeting. So all of the budgets from the superintendent to the curriculum department, sped department, business, all of ours are really looking at zero up. So we're looking at what are those individual key things that are going to be, that need to be budgeted for next year. So if I'm looking at mine, it's the business office. I need to budget our property and liability insurance. I need to budget things for the business office for RFPs. So I'm looking at those very specific line item things to build into that budget. So that's the building blocks behind the budget. When we're looking at staffing and class sizes, what we do is we look at the projected enrollment for next year, and we want to see, and we want to maintain our current average class sizes. So this is what is rolled forward into the initial budget for next year that we're looking at right now for our projected enrollment, what the FTE for general instruction would be, and what those average class sizes are. So K4 on average is 24.4 to 1, and 5-6 on average is 29.03 to 1. And this is general fund funded. And then I did take just a quick snapshot of the graph that was presented at the SIA presentation last month. It shows the progress of the district over the last several years and the commitment to decreasing class sizes. In 2018-19, that was our first year we had seen 2010 average class sizes. So that's been a significant progress and gain that's been made over the last several years for class size. Yeah, our peak, I guess, would be back in 2013, where most of them had all of their peaks. K4s were 30 to 1, 5-6 was 34 to 1. So those were pretty high class sizes. And then building the budget for next year based on all of the components and those building blocks and average class sizes, we rolled forward all of the other staffing levels. So the building department levels, administrative, counseling, district level, all of those other non-direct instruction FTE have all been rolled forward. We've used and updated class size averages and enrollment projections. We're looking at the fund balance based on the March cash flow that I just presented, making all FTE whole. So if there were a mid-year hire or people took leaves of absences, making everybody whole, reviewing all of our contracts, our department budgets. And then I did want to note in here, we are looking at including potential bond research and consultation costs to start our bond planning. Based on all of that, what we're looking at, if there are no state school fund adjustments made, reducing the state school fund, then we'd be looking at about $600,000 short to maintain an 8% fund balance. This is our initial look at just throwing all of those building blocks into a pot. We're still going through and doing all of our analyticals, making sure we haven't missed anything, making sure we haven't duplicated anything. This is kind of that first initial look of what we're seeing once we put all of those things together. We'll spend the next 3 weeks narrowing that down and finalizing it to be able to prepare and present a budget to you guys. This graph, I wanted to show what potential reductions in our state school fund and grants could mean to our district. Since we have we don't know what the impact's going to be overall once you consider the reduction in state funding versus utilizing any reserves or stimulus. But as things start to come out and as we start to hear information from the state, I wanted to give people an idea of what it meant to us. So if we hear there's going to be a 1% reduction in the state school fund, it's about $465,000 to us. A 5% reduction in the state school fund is $2.3 million to us. If people are talking about dollars, $100 million reduction to us is a $1 million reduction to us. So we're just over 1% of the state school fund allocation. And then like the similar for student investment account, we're assuming there's going to be reductions in the student investment account funds. Not sure what that's going to look like yet and how far that reduction is going to go. But to show everybody, we have about $4.9 million in student investment account funds. If there's a 25% reduction, it's a $1.2 million reduction out of our student investment account funds. And then lastly is the Measure 98 reductions. Measure 98 is also based on state funding. And so if we have a 25% reduction in Measure 98, it's about $404,000. So just to give people some perspective of what things might mean, I'm not saying that it's going to be a 25% reduction or a 10% reduction. This is just to give us an idea as we start to hear how this may impact us. And then lastly is the PERS. PERS is a big component to our district, and it's a long-term obligation that we have. The state PERS liability is $24 billion before this and before interest rates dropped. These rates, estimated projection rates that are in this table, are based on a 7.2% annual interest rate of return for our PERS plan. So if we don't get that 7.2%, it will increase our rates over the next several years. We're already anticipating about a 5% increase for the next biennium. So I know that was a lot of information, and I did want to follow up a little bit about what was talked about last month. We heard that class size, financial stability and looking at PERS, equity and decisions, library access, and ensuring admin and staff have the tools to work effectively. We heard that those were your guys' priorities and concerns. So I wanted to give another opportunity to allow you guys to discuss, is there something else that we should consider or something else that has not been brought up or discussed that we should think about?
Hey, Eileen, it's Brad.
Yes.
I would only make one comment based on the past month, that it does kind of change the landscape from about what we're going to have for next year and the next couple of years. And I would advocate that we even take an even more conservative path in terms of budgeting to get ready for those changes that are coming, I think. That would be my only comment.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay.
Eileen,
So,
Eileen, a question.
yes.
So when is the next meeting?
The next meeting is our proposed budget in May. May 14th.
May 14th. And at that meeting, is that the meeting where there will be a budget presented?
Yes, that's the budget message and budget presentation to the board.
Okay. But it's before we'll know, because May 20th is when we get the forecast.
Right. The economic forecast should come out on May 20th, and then it'll take ODE some time to figure out kind of what that impact is going to be to the state school fund. So we'll have to prepare and present a budget without knowing what the total impact is going to be.
Mm-hmm. And when do we have to have the budget approved? By June 30th or 31st or 30th?
By June 30th, it has to be approved by the budget committee and adopted by the board.
Okay. I can see this taking a long time to get done. I mean, not a long time, but getting the information, accurate information, and then putting the budget together. So what's the timeline for us approving this right now? What date were you looking at? I don't have the calendar in front of me.
So in order to be able to get into a board meeting and have time to do the public notification, we would need, at the latest, I would think the budget committee should have this approved by June 8th at the latest, because we still have to do all of our publications. Okay. And then we would have to do a alternative board meeting at the end of June to adopt the budget.
Okay. But that's not the current schedule, correct? Can we adjust the schedule? I mean, at what point, I guess I'm just wondering, at what point would we want to do this at the latest possible? When would we make the decision to adopt a budget as late as possible?
So that is going to be challenging, because it might come down to us not knowing until after June 30th.
Oh, okay.
So in a normal biennium in a legislative year, we're approving a budget based on estimates and projections, and this is what we think and what we're asking the state to approve. We might not know what that funding impact is going to be. We can wait and hold off a little bit, but I can't tell you when exactly we will know what the impact is going to be.
Right, right.
The other challenge is for the state to access any of these reserve funds. We have to have 2 quarterly forecasts that are showing below projected results. And so this would be our first forecast, and the next forecast isn't until September.
Right.
So there's a lot of variables that are out there.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Well,
I think, Mark,
oh, go ahead.
What I think we're going to end up creating this budget with our best information in mind. And then I think we have to come back in the summer when some of these revenue changes are announced. And then I think we come back in with some sort of supplementary budget. So I think it's going to actually be two periods of time for us to finally get to kind of the actual. That's my take. Eileen, do you see it differently?
Now, the only other thing that might allow us some more time is I know OSBA and OASBO and all of the groups are trying to work with the legislator on getting some rules changed on the budget law process and able to extend it and allow different time periods. But I haven't seen a draft of what that looks like and exactly what they're asking. But I do know that they're trying to change some of the public meeting laws and budget laws around this to allow us more time. I just don't have any of the details yet.
Oh, okay. Well, I agree with what Brad said, is budgeting very, very conservatively, because I mean, there would be a hit. It's just a question of how much.
Yeah, I guess my point is if we maintain as much as that above that 8% as we can, at least we can start to prepare for whatever that deficit's going to be.
Copy. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so are there any other questions or comments, or is there more information that our budget committee needs the night of the budget message to be able to start deliberating and discussing the budget?
I think we can contact you if we think of questions in between there, right?
Most definitely, yes.
Okay.
So that is all I have tonight.
And are we going to hear anything further from Mr. Parker?
Not on the budget cycle here. We're ready to move into the regular session unless there are any other questions. And so I think you just need to close it, Melinda. Is that right?
So I need to close down the meeting?
I believe so. I'm seeing that Kathy Bonson is no longer on the side panel. So there she is.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay.
I didn't go anywhere.
So what I have on my agenda is that any budget committee questions, comments, or requests?
Yes.
And that's just before we adjourn. Is there anything more from anybody?
None for me.
None for me.
None for me.
Okay. All right, then I will adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
board members, we have to log into a different meeting now. It should be on your